Stage to you. Give them a warm welcome, please. Come on up.
Thank you all for coming. We got a great panel today and a very exciting topic. I'm Mike Whitaker. I am the Chief Revenue Officer for Bond AI. You can see our table out there. Bond AI is a platform specifically designed to help banks grow deposits and increase share of wallet through the use of highly personalized one-to-one messaging using AI. And how that is possible, I think you'll hear from our panel here today. We've got Kevin Darmody, who is the CEO of Waterfall Bank. Thank you for being here, Kevin. We've got Gavin Kamowitz, who is a managing director at EY and heads up their AI and data practice. We've got Silka Gonzalez, who is the CEO and founder of ERMProtect. And we have Justin O'Connor, who is a partner and head of digital and core banking in the US for PwC. So we've got a star-studded lineup here. Let me start with you, Gavin. Can you provide us with just kind of a high-level definition of what artificial intelligence is, a little bit about its history and where you think it's going?
Sure, absolutely. So AI, I think, as of late, has been stereotyped with ChatGPT. But if we go back in history from the 1950s through to the 1990s, we've been using AI to process checks. Computer vision has been there to read and automate a lot of those processes that were occurring. And that was the first form of artificial intelligence. Then as you go into the 90s through to about 2015, you had machine learning, if you would. Machine learning is how you take historical information and you can then make assumptions about what's going to happen next. And you often see that in, even afterwards, the application in social is how do you create a segment? How do you market to a segment? So that people that historically have acted in a certain way, if you market a certain message to them, they will then get a better conversion rate. And so machine learning happened, and then we went into the deep learning stage. And the deep learning, we saw the advent of chatbots, Siri, even if you think about customers, interacting, asking questions, that was NLP. And we saw the advent of that up until about 2023 when ChatGPT launched. And then when ChatGPT launched, that was a game changer. That was a real differentiator about how we could interact with a computer in a way that a human speaks. And so as we've seen of late, you've got all these AI models coming out. And every week there's a new version of it and new vendors out there. And if you think about what these models are doing, that they've learned how to speak a pattern of the language. And the IQ levels increasing over time. The big announcement this year of DeepSeek, that sent ripples in the industry. Because now you've got a smaller company with an IQ level of about 120, more than the average person. Fast follow that, then the models evolve further. So now what does it mean that these models have an IQ? Well, it means they can reason. You ask it a question, it can reason back. But it can reason, and what's scary about this, it can reason with perfect recall. So it has a full knowledge of the history, but also it's got a way of thinking that is similar to if you were to hire a college grad. But it's not perfect. Right? Large language models can't do everything. It's language. If you go into ChatGPT now, today on 4.0, and you ask the question of what is 3.8 minus 3.11, the answer will be wrong. Right? It won't be right because it looks at that as language, not as numbers. The O3 models, the new ones, begins to understand numbers and begins to actually use applications there. So in short, when we talk about AI now and how it affects our industry, we're talking here about its ability to replace what a human can do in terms of thinking. And that's quite exciting. But anyways, I'll stop there in terms of the history and definition of AI.
Thank you. Very good. Silka, ERMProtect is a leading cybersecurity firm. Can you tell us a little bit about ERMProtect and then maybe talk about what the bad guys are doing, how they're using AI to penetrate banks?
Sure. ERMProtect is a cybersecurity professional consulting firm. We've been in business since 1998. The main office is in Coral Gables, Florida, but we service all the United States, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe and Asia. We handle all the aspects of cybersecurity. We have a section just to perform all types of cybersecurity assessments, from any type of ethical hacking to risk assessments related to privacy or any law related to security and privacy, PCI, in all kinds of assessments and remediation of the problems that we find during the assessments. We also help in implementations of cybersecurity and remediation and co-sourcing. We have a big practice for digital forensic, mainly to deal with breaches, regular breaches. And we're one of 20 companies in the world that can handle credit card breaches. And we handle also crypto investigation, fraud investigation, litigation support, and internal misconduct. And we have a significant library of trainings, and we also customize trainings for our clients. Cybersecurity is one of the biggest problems for AI. And the problem is that, every time that we have new technologies and advancements that help society in many ways, the criminals decide how they can use that against us and against banks and against your customers or your staff. So in cybersecurity alone, there's so many AI things that are available, and the future will be, I don't even know what the future will bring, but you can use AI products to identify specific, to perform very sophisticated attacks against, an institution. For instance, you can use different AI tools to identify the specific vulnerabilities of the organization that you're going after with a lot of precision. And then you can use other AI products to develop, code to do the hacking. And the code could be anything from malware, virus, any malicious code that can go like ransomware, denial of service, code to steal, data and credentials or to disrupt a network or your entire systems. That's one area. The other area is different tools that you can use for, for phishing, for example, where you can use the deep faking for either with phishing or any kind of text through text, or you can clone the voice of someone and try to use that voice to defraud individuals, or you can clone the image of someone and the voice of someone and put it in teleconferencing and have conversations to defraud individuals or organizations. So the level of precision and how you can use the level of intensity for these kinds of attacks and how real they can be are very, very scary. The other big problem is privacy and intellectual property and data leakage when you're using these systems. You have to be very careful with the type of access controls you put and how you're going to protect your private and confidential information. And when you're using AI models, you have other types of problems, like, are the systems transparent? Can you explain the results of the model? What kind of data you're going to use and restrict that data into those systems? And are you going to have, data that is going to be producing good results, or they're going to be a little bit biased, or hallucinations that are totally wrong? And you also need to have control over the data you're putting in and the processing your models, because otherwise it can be manipulated and the results will be not exactly the results that you're looking for. So there are many kinds of risks, like if you don't have also the right strategy to implement it, or the right team, or the expertise. But cyber, I think, and privacy are some of the biggest problems that you're going to have to face with this technology.
Thank you. Very good. Justin, we heard from Gavin that AI is getting better and better every day, yet a lot of banks, in fact, most banks are holding back on customer-facing and employee uses for AIs or even AI pilots. What, in your view, is holding them back, and is this legitimate?
I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, if you look at the most of the, so there's a report called the Evident AI Report that is a really useful knowledge base for kind of what's happening for the top 50 AI leaders, and I think there's a lot happening, and so I think when you look at like as the segmentation of like who's really investing in AI and who's making things happen, there's a little bit of an inside out, outside in kind of view of this where a lot of people are doing things behind closed doors of their banks and not revealing them, right? And then the things that they are revealing are maybe a little bit superficial. I think first, a lot of the work that we're doing right now is a lot of like helping people stand up their AI businesses and start thinking about the use cases and how to build things. But the governance and the risk management are the things that people are kind of really, our banks are really starting with to kind of make sure that they have control over this, and that they can. I mean, we have highly regulated institutions, right? And so we have to protect the bank. But so they're starting there, and then also starting to kind of test and learn. Depending on the size of bank, I think they're really relying on some of their vendor partners to really kind of bring that technology to bring meaningful outcomes and things that they can use for their customers. But the other part of this is there's the thing about just the amount of unlocking that can happen just in terms of productivity for inside the bank is very powerful. And so. But a lot of the time, the governance structures are restricting, the use inside of the bank, and so what you're winding up happening are people are using their own AI tools sometimes because they want that productivity, they want to do things better, faster. They don't have authorization to do them, so they're just basically starting to use their own stuff, which is a very scary proposition, right? And so now you've got people working on their own. So I think where you see the leaders, back to the Evident AI Index, of people who are really kind of doing well, we're at such an early stage of this that you kind of get ready for the real wave to come. We're just kind of on the front of it and allow people to really be prepared for your teams to really be able to embrace and enable these tools. But you have to give them access to them. You have to allow them to use them. They have to be trained. You have to learn what an agent is and how it can help them and how they can build them and reuse what other people are building.
Yeah, that's the same thing that we're seeing as well. It's a good insight. So Kevin, Waterfall Bank is a $300 million bank,
thereabouts,
give or take, and a progressive bank.
Well, let's not go crazy.
You guys are exploring an AI project yourself.
Well, yeah, and we're always trying to think of like how to improve the customer experience, how to make things better, how to be lean and mean, and we've dabbled with AI just because we want to be there, we want to be ahead of the curve, if you will, and we've looked at various challenges or various ideas of how it can help, and your product, in fact. We've worked with you all about getting information that we can use to talk to our customers, to actually perhaps even provide them with information that might be helpful for us. Certainly, getting the information for us so we can better monitor our customers, their activity, how we can be more helpful to them. I think that's very important for us, and we think that AI, we're bankers, so we're by nature we're cautious, right? And we've got to know the team that we're dealing with, and we've got to be able to build that trust. And somebody said yesterday about looking at the data, who owns the data, and all that. And so these are all challenges that we're thinking about and looking at, not only with that product, but some other things so as well.
Thank you. So, Silke, you mentioned hallucinations. One of the things that this is for Justin. Hallucinations in AI is real, right? I think we're getting better and better as AI providers at protecting them. But what kinds of measures should banks put in place to guard against hallucinations?
I mean, monitoring, right? But also it's usage, and then it's a lot of upfront testing. So I think we actually had a whole bunch of our team in New York last week to train people on how to build agents, right? And start off with making sure everybody knows what AI is and how it progressed and what's the difference between Gen AI and real AI and machine learning. But then progress down to what are the trends, what are banks doing, how can we serve our clients better, and then how can we build things for our clients, but build things for ourselves. And we had a test in the room, and a hallucination that was basically a mock test that our version of OpenAI, the most recent version, over the just 2 days had learned and eliminated the hallucination. So a lot of to the point of the your governance and kind of the data, everything is going to be about what the data put in and data put out, right? And it's going to learn over time. Some of this is going to be things that can't be avoided, but the AI will learn over time with usage, but then also making sure that the data is clean, the data is of high quality, and that there's consistent results it can pull from and for to make the questions. But watching it learn very quickly is pretty amazing, and things that were happening a day before, you didn't even have to do anything, it just kind of solved it for you.
Yeah. And if I may just add to it, there's a discipline of responsible AI. And there's also architectures of artificial intelligence. So everyone thinks the AI models learn always. But there's 2 solution architectures, which is very important to understand. So one is you do a single shot, and the AI never remembers anything. You send it a prompt, it does it, forgets it. In that case, you can have secure ways of architecting that if data retention is an issue, and you worry about, is it hallucinating because of certain bad factors? If you architect right your agents that you mentioned, that it will never learn and continuously make that same error. And that is called mostly RAG. You'd augment your queries with your own information, and you can then fire a shot to OpenAI, to Anthropic, to Grok. You can choose any one of those. And when you architect it that way, you then have testing. And you test the consistency of those results back. And so now when you are creating solutions with it, this is how you have to do AI architecture. And you have to think about those responsible testing to make sure that it is trust is the main thing. Is it consistent? Can I trust it? Has it gone to all the different data sources I need to bring back that result? And this year's trend, and I'm pleased you mentioned the agentic trend, it's the hottest buzz, agentic AI. Agentic AI is where you ask a question, it says, how should I answer it? Then it tries answering it, comes back saying, is that good? No, try again. So if any of you have OpenAI and you use deep research or Grok, deep think, you can watch it. It'll think, it'll try, it'll come back, it'll try. And that is part of the transparency. Mm-hmm. So when the models work, how do you show what it's doing? How do you show what it's thinking? How do you have full audit trail that you know exactly what is happening? And quite right, the best practices that I think we're all saying is you've got to make sure that the people that are implementing it understand how to, and you can test it. And therefore you can trust it.
If I may want to add something else, I think they cover almost everything, but it has to do a lot with the quality of the data that you're using and, how you're training that model. But it's also how you're testing the model. But you also need to have some type of analytics and review and QA and human intervention to make sure that the results you're getting are reasonable, they're accurate. I'm just going to tell you something that just happened, that I live with a federal prosecutor at home, right? And so, there was an incident in South Florida, and DOJ, where a lawyer used artificial intelligence, I don't know if it was ChatGPT or something else, to write a briefing. And he submitted the briefing to the court. And the judge was a little, not sure about that briefing, so she told the clerks to research, the citations and all the documents in the briefing, and they were all wrong. Well, that was a major problem for that lawyer on the review of the Florida bar. I don't know if he was this bar or not yet, but the lesson is you cannot just, when you're using technology, we also need to use common sense. You get something, you create something, just review it, make sure that it's accurate, because it's a very basic thing, but it's necessary.
Yeah, to the deep research function, like if you give it a problem to solve and you say, how do I take what are some of the prescribed strategies to lower efficiency ratio by a certain percentage? And it will do all this research and use deep research function, and it will show you exactly where it's getting its information from. And it will also evaluate all of the works of William Shakespeare and then tell you everything, every question, but it doesn't really understand Shakespeare. It is basically just doing language comparisons at a rate that we've never experienced before. It doesn't understand it, and that's why you always need a person that is going to be evaluating this stuff, because it's going to be wrong.
Yeah, very good. One of the themes that we've heard here at this conference is there's a lot of AI companies out there, most of them brand new, and one of the things that the pattern that people are telling me they're seeing is they've got really cool technology, but really not use cases that are specifically designed to meet the needs of bankers and specifically community bankers. So I know, Silke, that you're using AI for compliance and auditing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We're using AI in every single area of our practice and every kind of service that we provide to the clients. And I think this will continue evolving as AI continue getting better and more sophisticated. But we use it in vulnerability assessments. We use it in penetration testings with different tools that can help us with the exercises of that we're performing for the clients. We're using it also in different kinds of cybersecurity assessments or risk assessments that we perform for clients, or technical audits, because AI can go through a lot of information very quickly, and you can eliminate a lot of manual intervention and sometimes errors that you can commit when you're checking things manually. We're using also AI for help in documentation process, so can save a lot of time and be more efficient, and we can transfer that that cost reduction to the client. When you're doing, we deal with a lot of clients that are multinationals or very, very large clients, and they're doing an assessment, but they want to map it to the NIST standards. They want to map it to the PCI standards or to the CIS model, different kinds of security standards. It's very easy to use AI tools to do those mappings in a very efficient way, so you save a lot of time. You can even use it to start drafting some reports, but again, you cannot rely on the tool alone. You need to use your intellect and the expertise that we have as consultants. We also use it in forensics because you can use it to analyze patterns in logs and situations that when you're doing an investigation. You can use it in incident response also, and we can use it also in training because we do a lot of training for institutions on different topics of cybersecurity, like a table talk to simulate how they're going to react to a real, breach scenario. And we can also, use AI in those, table talks discussions, or when you're training employees at a bank how to protect themselves against phishing attacks, deep fakes of different kinds, of different fraud schemes with voice, with text, with emails, and how they will come at you. And when even if it's a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom meeting, that can all be fake. So we can use AI simulations, real things, to just take the service to the client and make it more real. And as we go forward, I'm sure we will add more stuff to all our services, but it can be used in all our services and add tremendous efficiency and cost savings. In addition to that, we're always looking at all kinds in the world of cyber. There's many, many, many tools in cyber that use AI now, like for endpoints, for firewalls, for incident response, for vulnerability management, for deep faking, for phishing, for threat analysis, for log monitoring, So we are always looking at different tools to improve our security posture as a company, as a cyber company, but also to help our clients to use these tools so they can improve their security posture of their organization. Because I think, the way I see it and in the future, many of these tools will become more and more powerful to protect organizations if we use them properly.
Thank you. Gavin, as we were preparing for the panel, you were talking about the use cases that drive real value for institutions. One of the ones that you said is very prevalent is around customer management.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that and how banks are using and financial institutions are using that today?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just want to also mention something you commented on. I don't know how many of you have done an interview recently via Zoom or Teams, but we hire a lot. I mean, the Big Four, we hire a lot of people. And just last week, we had a few candidates that were being assisted on the call to answer questions. And you could see they're actually reading. And when you ask a certain type of question, they then couldn't answer it. And fraud is everywhere, and people are using it for their own benefits. But that's real. This is not just academic. This is really happening. It's affecting all of us here. Before I answer the question about use cases, I do want to ask everyone, if you wouldn't mind, just a show of hands. How many people are using generative AI tools in their organization today?
Oh, wow.
So over here, I'm looking at about 30%?
Yeah.
I'm seeing, all right. So about 30%. And I also want to just talk through these tools before it gets to the customer experience. I'm going to start from the back end and work forward. A lot of productivity happens when software engineering teams, and maybe that's where the show of hands comes from, are equipped with productivity tools like GitHub Copilot or SourceForge Cody or Cursor. These are tools which developers use, and it's a slam dunk in terms of productivity gain. Every developer knows it. If you're not using it, the question is why. It's like, why use a calculator when Excel's there? There are certain tools that just make sense now. Low risk, everyone should use those tools. And so those type of slam dunk decisions is where we look at what our clients are basically saying is, what are the use cases that have a very clear-cut ROI and low risk. And certain things just make sense, which is developers need tools, and then enabling a secure version of an enterprise ChatGPT for employees to actually use in a secure way, just for basic needs, or Microsoft Copilot based on your internal needs, just for general productivity, drafting emails, and so on. All of these productivity tools does have impact to customer service. But then when you think about how you are presenting your digital interfaces, I think this is very exciting. The larger organizations have very big budgets for customer experiences, digital experiences through omnichannels and through large partnerships and getting the message personalized from what used to be a segment of, a few thousand target. Now it's like a segment of one. That's really a very important notion. And large organizations have been doing that and spending money there. But the cost to get there now has come right down. It's no longer a very big expense, which means smaller organizations are now able to offer similar services. That is a disruption happening now. And if we think about how to go about doing that, I completely understand many people may not have an IT organization which is equipped to change the bank. It's more run focused, but in terms of how do you change your organization, there are vendors. There are definitely vendors out there that specialize. And what our clients are thinking is, why should I be first? I mentioned this often in Outliers. There's a certain expression that book uses, which is always be third, right? Which is Facebook's third, Tesla's third, Google's third. What's the advantage of being first? And I think these type of forums are very important to hear what others are actually doing. and learn from people that have been a leader and tried and failed. And then once someone's succeeded, or two people have, then copy them. Unless there's a competitive advantage for you, why go through that on your own? Why spend money to build something when you're not a vendor, a tech vendor? And this year especially, I don't know what happened in February of this year, and we should exchange notes, but I got so many calls from CFOs in February to understand about AI. They all say, we are behind. We need help. How do we accelerate? And I don't know what happened in February. There was something happened, but February was the catalyst month where we found the industry now is accelerating investment into this particular area, and is looking at how do I onboard faster. Some of our larger clients are talking about for every week a customer is not onboarded, that's the equivalent of $1 million lost. Or smaller organizations, if I don't onboard as fast as my peers, I will lose that business. Period. Because it's the customer experience. People aren't brand loyal anymore. Younger folk now, they will switch brands easily. And I know we have a few organizations here that have benefited from investing in the brand. But what we have seen now with the application of generative AI is really focusing on that segment of one. So if you look at the larger vendor companies out there, the smaller early stage, people are really focused in that particular space to build. And one thing I would say, and this is my genuine recommendation, and it's not a personal one, it's for everyone, is if you have peers and you have a certain target experience you're after, smaller tech vendors are hungry to get into this area. They're hungry. Working with them, doing rev share, doing different type of partnerships with them, it's mutually beneficial, because otherwise you have to carry that cost of build, only to have new AI come out next month that disrupts everything. Rather have a vendor worry about that. Why should you? So we've noticed that, especially in the smaller firms. Larger firms, and I'm going to go outside sort of the industry, but in the private equity space, we've had a deal screening process that typically takes about 2 weeks at least to take a new investment opportunity. How do I screen? How do I do all the background checks? We've taken that from 2 weeks to 10 minutes. Now, the application of that, 2 weeks to 10 minutes, and we've helped some of our clients find larger, 50 billion grow to 200 in 3 years. And the reason is deal flow. They don't have to hire armies of analysts now. They can have one college grad follow a SOP, use this tool, screen out 1,000 opportunities, quickly, and then focus on finding that 1% of the best, and they can accelerate. So the application of generative AI is really affecting every part of the process, everything that your customers interact with, and also internal operations. But it doesn't mean you have to build everything. It really doesn't. Tech vendors are definitely innovating at a rate now that is faster than you can. And so what I'll say is you've got to find that balance of where do you have to build and where should you partner versus buy versus outsource and make it somebody else's risk.
Very good.
Yeah. And I think that the motions that we've all gotten used to, I hope, over the last decade when we're thinking about digital, thinking about how we can interact with fintechs, this is the same motion, right? This is what do I need to do for my customers? How can I find vendors to fill this specific gap? Not being friends with everybody and partnering with everybody, but where can I find partners that are going to fill specific needs for my customer base that's going to work for me? I think the other thing about being third, I love that thing, but I think what we've also heard is we kind of internally just talk to what are the impediments that we're getting as we're working with clients. You hear a lot of different things, but some people it's like about, hey, we're a family-owned bank. We are, we don't want to put our people out of work. There's this, you don't want to be last, right? And there's an abundance mindset that has to be taken here, that what you should be, this is an unlocking mechanism for your group, for your teams, to get them doing other things, right? And empower them, giving them tools that are going to help them be, there's the saying of AI is not going to replace people. It's going to replace people who don't know how to use AI. Giving people they're going to seek out those opportunities to work in that way, and they'll be able to do other things. And so I think, being restrictive and kind of being closed off and not embracing this thing is probably not where you want to be either.
Yeah. Just to add to that, back in the 90s, I mean, to just use a story, I was in a third world country, all right? And so one person's job was take something that's printed out from a printer, put it into the fax, and type that number and fax it off, all right? That was a job. That was a real job. And then I just told the person, well, you can always print to fax. The person's job was gone, all right? Nowadays, if you think about it, we have the challenge of college hires, because the apprenticeship model that our firms have is you grow up in the ranks. You start off taking meeting minutes, doing all the medial tasks, and then you learn the trade. But our clients aren't willing to pay for minutes now. Minutes you can automate. Why should you pay for someone to write minutes, do tasks? So we have a disruption now happening, which is some tasks are just redundant. And we need to also rethink ourselves, saying that not putting people out of work or using AI, but we need to rethink how our organization works and how do we deal with this change. Because there is a big change management that actually happens.
But that happens all the time,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Technology comes in and, people's jobs change. They might eliminate that role, but people's jobs, people might stay just because it'll change the role, or their
Exactly.
function.
Yeah, and then people, the employee retention actually improves, because no one wants to actually do the same medial task over and over. So yeah, I think as the roles change, people can also get the opportunities to grow. You're hiring much slower, but it doesn't mean your talent leaves. Yes.
Yeah, just making your employees more efficient. It's one of the things we looked at was, and we looked at. We're a little concerned because it was like a private AI company not associated with banking, but we spent 3.5 hours talking to them about building something in a banking. We were really looking at doing the background checks and getting the BSA, KYC, all that stuff. Where particularly for complex clients that we might have, and it might take a person's job. It might take them 3 weeks to do a complex customer, and you can get the information in 30 minutes. And and to your point, we would then have to the person's role who would do that. Now it's got to verify what that is. How true is it? How We were concerned with the private company that they just wouldn't keep updated with the technology, because they're not a banking company. They were just like doing something for us. So we're still kind of not sure if we're going to do that, but still.
Do you guys have an enterprise version to Gavin's question around of AI that people are using on a daily basis?
No, we don't have anything yet in place, but we were looking at Mike's stuff. We've looked at other opportunities, and again, we're bankers, so we're generally, conservative, and the first question is, okay, what are the regulators going to say, but so it's, but we're trying to be ahead of the curve, but we don't want to be the last, and so we've rolled it out for the most part to our entire sales force, to everyone. And the funny thing, for sales teams, the amount of saving times on prep, right? Getting everything that's happening to this client right now, and it will aggregate all that information. This was a use case of somebody had started taking a picture of their client's background on a Zoom call, and then asking ChatGPT, what can I learn from this client's? What is this client interested based on what's in their picture on their screen? And it would give great insights in terms of what it was seeing on it. Has a dog, has family, sports, and it would give you all kinds of. I won't call you then. I'll come back. That guy's a slob.
Blur your background, Kevin. Blur your background. Well, Kevin, what do you think is the the one factor that's motivating you to jump into AI?
Well, there's a number of things, efficiencies, knowledge improvements, but we're all about the customer experience and how it can benefit us, So, for example, like if your system is giving us like what our customers are doing with other banks or other financial institutions, what other financial institutions are doing that maybe we can learn from, those things are very important and can help us to improve the customer service. I'm not wild like AI, you see the output. I'm not wild about some of the written stuff. It just seems clunky and kind of very, it seems like, what do you call them? But anyway, it's not very flowery or it doesn't flow real well, but it can provide the information, to our salespeople, and they can then use that to actually go out and talk to the customer, and it's enhancing their the experience with a one-on-one type thing with that information rather than just getting an email saying like, oh, we can offer you something better. I'd rather have my people going out and talking to the customer.
Right.
So.
Silke, what are some of the factors that banks should consider when approaching an AI project?
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that should be considered, but let's start more from the governance, like you were talking about, and the broad picture. So they need to have, first of all, a strategy. Okay, the correct strategy. They have to have some planning. They're going to have to set up some policies, procedures, and standards, how users can and cannot use AI within the financial institution, so that you can put some boundaries around how this is going to be used. You need to have the right team, and you need to have the right leadership in the team. And you probably need your CEO sponsoring this initiative heavily. And you need other leaders. And you need a cross-functional team if you're going to be implementing this in an institution, bank or otherwise. Because it's not, let's say that he decided to put it in operations to improve some areas that automate and create efficiencies, but he needs to consider compliance, laws, regulations. He needs to consider privacy, what kind of information. He needs to consider cybersecurity because it's a big issue. So he will need a cross-functional team. He will also need AI expertise inside the bank or bring them from outside. You might need, a vendor that brings the software, but you might need, other people that will help you if you don't have all the expertise to provide that expertise in your bank. You will have to provide training to your people in AI ongoing so that they can really take that technology to the next level to create efficiencies that you're looking for. You're going to need to decide what kind of data you're going to use to feed that beast, that system, to train that system. And so you want that data to be, carefully selected because of privacy, because of cyber, because, the accuracy of the data, so you don't have hallucinations or biases. You also want to have, how am I going to test it? How do I check the results? How do I have monitoring and, quality assurance to make sure that this is working effectively? You want some matrix. You want also to, deal with, people's fears of displacement of the jobs, so that, like he said, we're all going to have to learn AI in the future, and we will do our jobs better using AI as a tool, but we will use our skills for other things that are beneficial for the bank. So these are some of the things that I think that are necessary, but also from the cyber perspective, because that's my area of expertise, implementing AI in an organization, bank or otherwise, is no different than implementing any other big system. And so in these kinds of systems, in cybersecurity, you need a lot of cybersecurity. So you need a strategy for cyber and AI, and you need plans and policies, procedures, standards. But you also need to have some strict access control implemented throughout the infrastructure, the systems and the data. You need, to use the approach of least privilege, access to the data that you're putting there. You need to have all the good things you need in cyber, dual authentication, good encryption for data in transit or at rest, good backups, good incident response, good business continuity, good program change, good logging, patching, segmentation, all that stuff, good configurations, all that stuff that cyber is needed in a good implementation for a system. It will not be different for AI. And you also need to think about ongoing audits and testing, risk assessments for this AI system to make sure that you have it under control and you're addressing privacy, compliance for the regulators, and things of that nature. You will need to perform also penetration testings into these systems and do social engineering to see that, that is controlled. So all these different things that are used in cyber, in other systems will be used here, including a lot of tools that are now coming on board for cyber in different pieces, like the endpoints or the firewalls or the incident response or vulnerability management or log management, to use all that to protect your enterprise and your AI system on an ongoing basis. And as the technology evolves, you need to look at new things that are coming that you can integrate there to make sure that you are protecting the house. And also don't forget about the third-party vendors, all your partners, because a lot of community banks and a lot of institutions use a lot of vendors. They are going to interact with your systems and your people. And you need to understand what kinds of implications that will have to your bank, to your operations, to your data, to your clients. Mm-hmm. And if those systems that your third-party users are using AI, what is the impact of that into your systems? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff that has to be considered when we're thinking about how should we handle this. It's not an easy thing, but it's doable if it's planned properly and managed properly.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, thank you. Last question before we open it up to the audience for questions. Justin, you've seen a lot of different projects in the mid-size, large community banks. What have you seen is the most powerful use of AI, particularly in the mid-size and community banking space?
I mean, I think there's probably two ways, and I'd love Gavin what he's seen. I think a lot of the, I think you see a lot of, discrete pieces of technology being put on the front end of the customer experience that are making some meaningful impact. But I think, then there's the operational productivity gains that are being gained in the middle, to Kevin, to your point, of like if I can get people to kind of think through these processes, how can I automate? And it's just much more advanced than machine learning now. But I think the biggest things that we're seeing are around just like technology, like SDLC enablement, and just the amount of time it used to take for, a design phase where it's not just the GitHubs and the actually building code. It's the upfront design of, you're going from teams of business analysts to like one or two people. Here's the features I want to build, and I can enable so much more. I can accelerate the amount of time to build has just been so compressed. And we're building technology platforms now. There's so much need for solutions that the power is now in the hands of the wielder of the tech. And it's just I think that's like leveled the playing field probably more than anything. And what that's going to do is accelerate the front end. It's going to accelerate all the things that we're able to do within the channels, within the core. And I think what that's leading to, Billy, is I'm kind of wondering whether or not, Klarna had this big announcement where they were just going to say they were going to rewrite every single core application, their ERP, everything. They backed off from that, right? Because they kind of realized that was not a reality. But I think we are moving to this time where, that there's been this change in segmentation of the way that we treat banks. And I've had this conversation with Stephanie Ferris too, is like, we used to be able to kind of be predictive about how banks would behave based on their relative size. And now what we're seeing is, and maybe it aligns to like the hands that were just in the audience around who's using Gen AI right now, is that there's actually 1, 2, 3 positions. And when you look at the major segments of the banks now, and they're not behaving, you have $2 billion banks that are behaving like $250 billion banks. They're led by very progressive leadership teams who are willing to make big bets, and they're in the first spot. And then you've got teams that are really in that second spot who are going to be fast followers and make sure they're right behind. And then there's the laggards, and who are kind of, maybe for whatever reason they're in that last spot. And so you're just like, those folks are kind of pushing the envelope. But I think that's where the amount, to me, that where they're really enabling that technology on the back end and kind of taking control of their fate and using tech to really rapidly push through their SDLC, they're just seeing outweighted gains. And so back to that, I'm only going to refer to it one more time, the Evident AI Index. The next version of that is going to show that a correlation between kind of move to cloud and modernization, and some of the banks are separating from the pack at multiple levels.
Yeah.
So there's a correlation between the modernization agenda and the ability to use AI at scale. And some of that is the muscle memory that's being developed. Some of that is just that, all of this stuff works better with better data and, all the cyber protections that are native to cloud and all the things that are available to you.
That's a great answer. So we have a few minutes for questions from the audience. I think there's a couple of microphones out there.
A question I have is, it's a bit of a two-part question. On the first, are you espousing uses of AI primarily in applications that traditionally don't require a lot of model validation by the examiners? And the second part of that is, are there any model validation techniques that you see for using AI? Because in the past, at least, my understanding where this might provide a lot of benefit, for instance, transaction monitoring and BSA or credit predictive, for the ALLL, is most subject to model validation requirements, and the examiners really dislike it when you can't show how an assumption leads to a result. And part of AI in particular is that, unlike machine learning or even robotics, the assumptions are changing on a second by second basis, and so you can't validate the data ultimately, or that it's functioning as it should, because the assumptions are changing underneath all the time. So two-part question. One, is it primarily for uses where model validation is not front and center, or are there now techniques for model validation of AI applications, or that you're aware of that have been accepted by examiners?
Anybody want to take that?
So I'll start. So I haven't seen anyone use generative AI as a replacement for the model validations that have been happening, up until 2023. Like, there's not been a difference. I don't think anyone's taken on the appetite of, I'm going to change my model to be an AI model. What we have seen, though, is AI is helping to develop and create new models which go through the same rigor. We've had a very reluctant or very risk-averse approach to that, and we've also seen in other areas the SEC asking a lot of questions about that one topic. So there's been in terms of model validation approaches, if I'm understanding the question right, we've actually just kept on the same approach on how you've tested models in the past, continues in the future. The rigor you might increase, but how you go through your development lifecycle that we've been talking about with your tools, that they would increase your ability to generate more models. But then further to that, what happens upstream of the model? You mentioned sensitivities and monitoring. So what if you are monitoring for news events, for SEC filings, for court cases that may affect customers, may affect models, may affect various things? Just like RPA, robotic process automation being the trend of the 2010s until now, that's been amplified with AI now. It really has been. Look at UiPath, and just you can point it to different sources, extract data from unstructured sources, and then feed that into your existing models. But that's upfront, not in the model itself, and it's what's feeding those factors in. but it's the same discipline. You know, in a CDO title in my last role, that was a big emphasis. We had to make sure that all of our models were predictable. Yeah, I think we talked about that. You had full transparency into how it worked. It was tested thoroughly. And you know, looking at what all of our clients are doing, we have not wanted to even change that. I don't think he even needs to change that. And I'm very curious if anyone's experienced anything different, but we've never advised otherwise in terms of that approach. So unfortunately, I can't physically see that area. I don't know if there's any further comments on that. Or,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. We haven't seen the application that way. More, it's like it's, and I think this is back to, you know, learning models. It's always going to be not perfect, but I agree that creating new models is likely the way that's going to happen. And then you're always looking for validation. It's more of an, I just think of it as an accelerator rather than something that's going to give you the answer.
Yeah.
I just want to add something, you know, because this is, when you think about, if I'm a banker, if I'm like Kevin, you know, that he's thinking about this, it's like a daunting task, how we're going to do that in the bank. But also, I guess, if you also, with your team, try to prioritize, you know, what are all the different functions of the banks and processes, and try to figure out where should you go first, second, and organize in a way that is not, you cannot do it all at once. You need to start with one, and you learn from that to the next process, and then to the next process. I think that would be helpful. I have seen a lot of my clients that are bank, we have a lot of bank clients that are using, you know, AI, some that are starting. They're using it a lot in operations, in different areas of operations. They use it a lot for fraud detection and management, money laundering, you know, evaluation of risk for lending, even to develop policies and procedures that they need, or customer service improvement. But I think that if I were in a situation like you or someone in a bank, I would like to take the elephant and slice it in pieces, prioritize it, and start that way.
Excellent. I was actually hoping to have more time, but I can see that we're running out of time quickly here. So at the risk of Patrick getting mad at me, I think I'm going to thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate you making a trip down here. Great content. And these guys will be around if you want to catch them one-on-one sometime during the morning. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much as our panel exits the stage. We could probably spend another hour and a half listening and talking about this, and I think that's the first half of the conversation. We are going to take a 10-minute coffee break in the foyer. You can discuss, get your questions ready, because the second half of this conversation is coming in our next session. It'll be about AI and fraud. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes.